Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Jason Adams. I am with Earth Solutions, or I guess just Earth now. Hi, Sandy. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Nope. Can you hear me? Nope. Hello, hello. There we go. All right. I usually don't need a mic. I'm usually pretty loud-winded, but I'm a little hoarse today. Huh? Big room. I know, it's a big room. Like, how does that guy know what I'm talking about all the way over there? Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, he does. Okay, all right, cool. All right, so today's a fun one. I like this conversation. This is going to be kind of casual because it's constantly changing. But my role here today is talk about AI, large language models, and the impact they're going to have on reducing damages. Hi, Colin. Good to have you join us. It was funny. I just on the walk over here, I got a little alert, and it said Best Buy is laying off the Geek Squad because of AI. And I thought to myself, like, shouldn't they have seen that one coming? Like, right? It's the Geek Squad. Like, they're the guys that are supposed to help us out. But they just eliminated all their jobs at Best Buy because of this. And so when I start thinking about AI and what it's doing in our industry and some of the role that we're playing in it, it becomes a very interesting conversation because I think people have very, different perceptions of what AI and large language models are and how they affect our day-to-day work and how they affect what we're doing inside of the industry. So my goal today is to kind of walk you through some of the stuff we're doing, some of the stuff that we're doing both with our one-call centers, with our utility members and our contract locators, and even extending it out into the excavator field. I think it's a really interesting way of helping kind of align the goals of trying to reduce damages by 50% in 5 years. And I kind of want to walk you through some of these scenarios. So first, I'm Jason Adams. I was with Earth, and then I left Earth and started another company that specialized in AI, and then Earth bought us. So now I'm back at Earth, and I brought some friends along. I spent about 25 years in this industry, and somehow, some ways, if you didn't start in damage prevention, but you're sitting here today after having 15, 20 years in, you kind of realize that, man, this is a very small group, a very small family that have been working together to try to solve some of these gigantic challenges for the last 20 years. And just looking at the strides that we've made over the course of even, let's say, the last 5 years, it's amazing what we've done with tech. And what I'm here to tell you is what I believe we'll see in tech over the next 5 years will change everything that we've done in the last 20 years. If you've done anything in this industry for a while, to me, this is bigger than the integration of GIS into our world. Previously, we used paper and maps and all this stuff, and then we went to GIS, and it really revolutionized how we did registrations, how we did notifications. But I'm telling you right now, in my view, what we're going to do with AI will change the game substantially more than what GIS did. So we talk a lot about risk, and it's the easiest conversation to begin when we talk about AI, because risk is really identifying factors that we see on tickets that would indicate potentially a higher risk, or even in some cases, a lower risk that goes into tickets. And we're going to talk about all the different ways that we look and create this risk, including AI, including our gut, including just basic tabular data. But what's really critically important when you're starting to talk about AI is understanding how to level the field when it comes to data. And so fortunately for us at Earth, we touch a lot of data. I believe the last time we looked at, we're somewhere over about 150 million tickets in the industry come to our solutions. And so that gives us a great repository of data. Now we're limited to what we can do with that data, but it doesn't really limit us from understanding and gaining really good insights. So if you look at that, that's more than half of all the tickets that are created in the industry we're getting access to really start to look at trends out of it. And that's going to be critically important. Anytime that you're working in what we call these large language models, the more quality data that you put into it, of course, the more likelihood that your results are going to reflect the accuracy that you're looking for. If you start with just a small amount of data and it trends in a unique pattern, it's going to give you some false negatives. And we'll talk about that as we start to build these out. I have to say that I don't have my glasses on and I can't read this slide, so I'm going to do that real quick. This is what happens when you get old. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is kind of the life cycle of a ticket, where data is involved. I want to talk about where we're planning on adding more data to the process. One of the fun parts about being at our company is that we work with a lot of one-call centers, some very progressive centers who are trying to add more data to the overall process. This includes significantly more data about positive response out in the field. It includes more data when we're creating the ticket, whether it's GIS or it has other factors. So introducing more quality data into the ticket process is going to allow us to achieve greater results when it comes to learning what that statistical data shows us and can demonstrate. So you'll see some other sessions. I have a session with one of our centers. Misty Wise is doing one on AR360. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 new fields of data being added to a ticket. That's probably somewhere between 30 and 40% increase in the data of a single ticket when the life cycle of the ticket's over. What that means for us in this room is far more information to make better decisions, but it also requires the people in this room to participate in the process to define what data has value. I was talking out in the hallway earlier today and somebody said, hey, does anybody ever just close a ticket? Not close a response, but just close a ticket. Say, I'm an excavator and say, I'm done working, and you close it. And the one, I only knew of a couple centers that actually have a close code, not a closed response, but it says, the excavator says, I'm done working. That little nugget of data tells us a million things, and we're not collecting it today. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we expand and grab that data? So as we start to talk about all of this data, I want to kind of talk about the relationship of the data and how it plays with each piece and how variables that fall outside of damage prevention affect the very work that we're doing today. And what we've seen as we started to expand what we're doing with AI at Earth is a ton of factors that fall outside of the typical data that's being collected during the ticket creation process. We'll talk everything from weather patterns, traffic patterns, vegetation growth. We're talking everything. And so as we blend more of that data into this process, it gives us better insights on how to create less risky or safer tickets. You'll see in this chart here, it's really easy. First thing, I had developers build all of these charts for me. So when you have them do that, you should also take the time to ask them to explain them to you. Which I didn't get the greatest explanation. They just told me and says, look, if you see 811 tickets and then you see damages, you see that big spike all the way at the very end, and that says that's high risk. What they're basically saying is every ticket that comes out has real risk associated with it. So we have to get better in our language that we talk and just talk about high risk and low risk, because what we don't want to do is an industry start saying this ticket isn't risky. That's a horrible process to be. Every single ticket has value. It needs to be really kind of understood what value it has and how we handle it correctly. So let's make sure as an industry we don't start saying low-risk tickets or tickets that aren't valuable, because that's a false statement. And I'll show you a little bit down the road what happens with some of these false statements. When you start to deploy those and it changes what you're doing with your risk algorithms, it really can throw you off and put people at risk. So what we've started to do, though, is, did that disappear? Okay. Might go back and turn that on. All righty. So what we've done right now is we look at 3 different ways of using data to identify risk. The simple one is what I call the good old gut, right? I've been in this industry forever, and if you tell me a fact, I will feel very confident whether you're right or not, just from my experience. If you said that tickets that are created on Saturday have a far greater risk factor than those created on Tuesday, my gut kind of tells me you might be right. I don't know. But if you told me tickets that were white-lined have far less risk than tickets that aren't white-lined, I'd say absolutely. That's a logical statement. And so we'll start to talk a little bit about more what our gut tells us and what data tells us, and why we have to be cautious in some of these areas. Especially when we start blending data that falls outside of the common 811 notification cycle. And that's where we started talking a bit earlier about understanding outside data. And we'll start to highlight some of these as we get further along. So vegetation management, weather, traffic patterns, all of those things that we kind of take for granted and we don't document on the creation of a one-call ticket has a huge effect on whether that ticket will introduce risk and what level of risk gets introduced based on some outside factors. So by ignoring that, we're kind of ignoring part of the challenge of reducing damages by 50% in 5 years. So what I'm here to say is we need to look at everything that we're doing in order to understand what's cause and effect. And I'll talk to you, I'm not going to make this a sales pitch, but I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're trying to really elevate our tools to take this advantage and how we're doing it not just in one instance of the platform, how we're doing it with our ticket management platform, how we're doing it with our education platform, how we're doing it with our ticket creation platform, and how all of those combined, we believe, ensures a safer experience when it comes to dealing with risk. All right. So just really quickly, where does our training data that we train our models come from? Obviously, damage prevention is the lead source. At over 150 million tickets, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40 billion points of data that we touch. It's incomprehensible that a human could look at that and derive trends out of it. You have to use these large language models that are trained to understand, to highlight, and identify trends. So we get, of course, a lot of data out of there. We get a lot of data from our Exactix platform, which is the one call center's platform for creating tickets. We're extremely limited in what data we can use other than looking at trending data. So we can't really do a significant deep dive into the data, but we can get ideas of how it works and how it corresponds with the activities once the tickets are actually released and in front of a client using it in a system. Training and competency, hopefully you've all heard the CGA is really putting that forward. They're using our Corsetra platform to do training. What's really critical is, as we start to talk about AI, you can't change behavior by just showing a stat to somebody. You can't say, this ticket's riskier, and then hope that things go correctly. You have to train, you have to educate, you have to change behavior. And you can't do that by simply throwing a bunch of data at somebody. You need to throw a bunch of data at somebody, say, this is what we're understanding, and this is what you should do in this scenario. And I think that's a critical piece that so many people miss, is understanding behavior after identification. So that's a huge piece of moving forward. One of the pieces that I'm so proud that the CGA is adapting, you're never going to change this goal of 50 in 5 years without changing behavior of everyone that's participating in this. From the excavator to the contract locator to the utility owner to anybody, even the homeowner, is an opportunity to change the understanding. And we've been in this industry a lot. I look around and see a lot of familiar faces. We've all sat here for tens of years, 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. Sandy, I think 30 years maybe, 42 years. She's dedicated her life to making one-call damage prevention safe. And so what I'm saying is we're at the cusp of a great opportunity to learn from all the knowledge that we've built over the last 42 years, and how can we make that better? And how can we make sure the next generation that doesn't have 40 years of experience is handling the situations appropriately? Because I don't know about you, but people keep getting younger and they have all these brilliant, great ideas, but they have no understanding. They'll tell me, like, I don't want to get any of my sales guys in problem, but I love them, they're great, but they'll tell me a statement that's obviously false. They just don't understand what they're talking about. And I like to make fun of those people. They're fun, especially when they're my employees. But what it concerns me is they don't have the basic understanding of saying, what are we here for? We're here to reduce damages and keep people safe. No matter what we do, that's the end goal. We're not here to create more tickets. We're not here to sell more software. We're here to try to reduce damages and keep people safe. If we do all of those things, we're going to find that finance and all the other stuff comes together fine. But what's critically important is that we teach the next generation the lessons we've learned, and we can't do it on a one-on-one basis. So this is where using AI and teaching trends and teaching habits can be built into algorithms that can be passed on for the next generations to use these tools, so they don't have to suffer and understand that when it's pouring down rain, your lines might disappear and you might need to go remark those. And so if you start to look at weather patterns and put those inside of your AI, now what you start to say is, oh, I'm actually addressing that fact, but I'm building it into a repeatable algorithm. So I think that's pretty critical. The other pieces that we have, of course, and some of these might fall outside of this audience, but what you'll see is we look at slope, we look at fire and seismic data through a company called Boston Geospatial. If you want to feel very stupid, you sit in the room with these guys for about an hour. I interviewed a guy, Justin, who's the head of this group with Boston Geospatial. They use incredible amounts of satellite data. Satellite data is so much more advanced than it was even 5 years ago. And they look at slope, they look at weather patterns, they look at all of these things. And that information goes directly into our risk algorithms that helps us understand. 20 years ago, none of us ever thought about slope. I mean, at least at damage prevention, we were like, create a ticket, get it into the hands, and hope all goes well. The difference now is we look at tickets and go, if we create a ticket here, what's the likelihood that this ticket will introduce more risk than if I created a ticket somewhere else? And we start to look at factors like slope. Of course, now we're looking at weather, and if you've ever dealt with weather and how that changes, there's a very big difference if you're a one-call center in the state of Florida than if you are in the state of New York. Your digging seasons are different, the risk to everything is different. So what we've learned is, and we kind of knew this, that our risk algorithms are very dependent on the geography and where it is and the time of year. That's pretty obvious. What we didn't realize is how critically it is important into the Florida area, and you start to look at they're digging all of the time. When you start to take that in consideration, also with their, let's say, a large project's going on, like a big fiber install. Once we start to see a lot of activity, what we see is a lot of missed locates not getting done in time. And I don't have to tell you, but obviously when we see missed locates happening, we see a higher area of damage. So it's little pieces like that that all step together. So our predictive model, and we'll start to go through this. Sometimes we're not quite giving away the secret sauce, but we're telling you a whole lot about it. So when I see all my good competitors sitting in here, I want everyone to use this model because we've seen it, we've run it against hundreds of millions. I think the last time we looked, it was billions of tickets to see how predictive this thing is. And we're getting really good feedback. What we're seeing right now in our numbers is somewhere able to identify about half of your riskiest tickets in the top 10% of your tickets. In other words, if you're receiving tickets, for every 100 tickets you get in, for every 5 damages you get out of 100 tickets, just bear with me on these ratios, for every 5 tickets, I'm going to tell you what 3 of those are going to be. And that's a pretty important thing for changing behavior. It helps you allocate resources better. It helps you train people properly. It gives you a lot of opportunity to do well. But the value, the ROI that we started to see are the tickets that are far less riskier. And for their clients that are not actually going putting boots on the ground for every single ticket, if they're getting too many tickets and their staff isn't big enough, at least we give them some guidance of saying, if you're not going to get to every one, maybe these are the ones that you don't roll a truck to. Maybe we should send some additional information via email or some sort of contact, but we may not roll a truck to every one. So this is the way that we actually look at those. And this is a secret. I think more and more people are becoming comfortable with it. It's called drift. And so what happens is we're accurate today based off all the information we have. And if we don't change behavior, the accuracy will probably be similar. But that's not why we're here. What we're trying to do when we're using our AI is identify potentially challenging areas and then change behavior. When you change behavior, that has effect on the data that's coming in. What you're hoping is you're seeing less damages. What you've just done is said, hey, anytime I see these blocks of tickets, I'm going to send a notification out to the field. I'm going to roll an extra truck. I'm going to follow up on it. And then guess what happens? You don't get a damage. And so what happens is the damages that you are getting are because of different factors. And this is what we call as drift. Behavior changes the AI. AI then adjusts. It shows us different results. We have to change our algorithms in order to accommodate that drift. If you're not talking to somebody about drift and AI, you're not having a conversation. If people don't understand the basic premises of that, anything that you do today will be gone tomorrow. So I think it's critically important. And our head data scientist who works for us, Kyle Murphy, who, if you get a chance, you should really go onto our YouTube channel and watch him do it, because he's a very talented developer, but he also has a great handle on how analytics, he's the one that basically created our risk scenario programs at Earth. He does a really nice podcast breaking this down by field, by understanding, and understanding what drift is. It's a great listen. And I know I told my mom that, and she laughed at me. She never listened to it. So this is our model and drift. And I won't try to get too crazy on you here. But just so you have an understanding, we train our models. We have many, many different models. But our national model that we use for most basic clients, we train twice a year. But for individual clients who use their own set of data, who are using their own damages, using their own ticket data, we can train in real time. And you say, why would you do that? Well, if you're correcting behavior today, you want to change for tomorrow. So we're constantly retraining the model. That's why what you're seeing is guaranteed results that keep delivering time and time again. What we're hoping for one day is train for the untrainable, that there are no damages. That's the best, but I don't think that's going to happen, at least in my lifetime. So I'll talk a little bit about climate studies. I'm going to try to breeze through some of these things in case people have questions, because this presentation can go on for hours, and I know that's what you guys all want to do on day one. So let me get through this. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of what we've seen so far. Of course, proactively identifying high-risk tickets. We all get that. The other thing that we've seen now is behavior change by just communication, which is a huge piece. And I know this sounds silly, but you don't have to roll a truck. We had one client that said, this is ridiculous. You've just showed me that I've got 10,000 extra truck rolls I have to do in order to reduce my damages. And we're like, whoa, it's like, we're talking about changing behavior. So what we did was set up a notification system. We send them an email. We send extra data through maps and stuff to the people on these higher risk tickets. And just doing that has seen results already. I mean, it's not changing the game. We're not seeing 50% reduction, but we're seeing reduction in that. So just the basic ability to identify and notify is changing behavior. If you want to go to the next step and roll a truck or do a tailgate meeting or something like that, we've seen a drastic reduction in this. We have clients in the Midwest who've seen anywhere from 15 to 25% reduction in damages over the last year by simply doing notifications out to the field and an occasional truck roll. So, all righty. Another one, this is a good one, Crown Castle, one of our clients, by not using AI, by only using their gut and setting up filters that would say anytime there's this type of work, send this notification out. Anytime that this excavator who's hit me before is on a ticket, send a notification out. Just using that, not using AI, reduce their damages by 17%. We're in the process now of trying to figure out how much more gains will we see now that we've added the AI model to theirs. So that we're really curious about that. So, and then finally is, how does AI predict highest risk? And we talked about this of the 51%, and then the risk score that goes along with this. So I've got a couple slides that I really want to show here, but the best way to ease into this is through our risk factor trivia, because at our user group meeting, you can't participate if you sat in our user group meeting because you know the answers. But we were going to give a car away if somebody got all of these right. And that was the idea, because now that I've given you the heads up, you'll probably think that what you think is right, and then you're going to realize I said it's not, and then you're going to change the other way. But I want you to go through some of these processes and just look at some of the data we've uncovered. All right, so first one. In North America, do locate requests that indicate directional boring have a higher or lower chance of resulting in an incident? So by show of hands, who thinks it's a higher result? That's like 60%. And people think it's a lower result. Okay, about even. All right. I've done this for a long time, so my guess would, if I saw directional boring, I would say that that's probably going to have potential to be more risky. Just my gut tells me. And so what we see, and here by our thing, it was a higher chance. Somewhere in the neighborhood of by about 30% more, we'll see that. So that was good. That was one of those things you go, all right, it's feel good. This is what I thought, that's what happened. I believe this AI crap, right? This is actually working. Okay, all right, that's one. I think we did 5 questions it was 5 or 6 questions, and of that, we had 0 people get them all right. So bonus question, how much more likely is an incident? And then I kind of gave it to you. You'll see that directional boring are 61.73% more likely to result in an incident than ones without. That's interesting. I felt that was a really good way. I felt good about myself because I got it right. And then we did this question. All righty, breaking ground by month in Florida. We have any Floridians here? I saw Mike earlier. So. I know, oh, there he is. All right, I knew I'd get at least one there. All right, hey. So in Florida, locate requests which are scheduled to begin digging in what month are most likely to result in an incident? Does anybody have a gut reaction? Because it's Florida, right? My family lives down there. It's beautiful all the time. It's really hot in the summer. It's kind of wet. Anybody have any idea what month is the riskiest month to put a ticket in? October. February. And these are, because you've spent a lot of time in the industry, you feel confident, you say, I know this is feeling good. What would make you say October?
I was thinking about hurricane season.
Oh, good. Good. That's somebody that's dealt with hurricanes before. I got it. Okay. Well, here's the answer. And guess what? It is January. January has the highest. Now, we looked at this. None of us could figure it out why. But I've got a sneaking suspicion. And it has something to do with all those holidays, I think, and when tickets get created and when tickets get located. Because if you look at the amount of late tickets in Florida, January, February are some of the highest months. But if you're in New York, you're like, who's digging in January? But if you're in Florida, you're like, who's digging in July, right? So there's a different attitude. And you've got to see these things. So this is why national models for AI are really cool, but in a lot of cases, useless. You need to really drive what you're trying to accomplish and understand what your goal is for trying to create these algorithms. So I think there's a bonus question. Oh, there isn't. I thought there was a bonus. All right, so January. But the challenge was we had no backup data to tell us why, right? We just saw that January had the most high-risk tickets based on 100 million tickets that we ran through here. So we'll get out of Florida and we'll go look in Texas. In Texas, locate requests which are scheduled to begin digging project on what day of the week? So what day is when digging is supposed to begin is most likely to result in an incident. All right, there's only 7 days. All right, so pretty limited amount. Anybody have any guesses? Friday? Everybody say Friday? This is a smart audience. Saturday? All right. Let's see what the answer is. So, unbelievably, Sunday is the absolute worst day in Texas to begin a project. It kind of makes sense, though. You start to look at it. If somebody calls in a ticket, I don't know how it works typically because it's usually working days and every state's different. We can argue back and forth what makes 48 hours versus 2 days and all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to begin a project and you're going to start digging and you're a homeowner, let's say, and you want to plant some flowers and you say, Sunday's my day, that's the riskiest day. I don't know, does that make a lot of sense? But I will tell you this. This kind of information starts to give us feedback when we're creating tickets of encouraging people to create tickets with work start days that are not Sunday. And I know that sounds silly, but if you start to create a ticket and you're given the option that this ticket on Sunday might get located on time, it might not, but if you move it to Monday, there's a higher chance it'll get located, a higher chance that you'll be able to work safely around that. If you're creating the ticket, you might say, oh, I'll just move it to Monday. Of course, we don't all have that luxury. Large construction companies hate me right now because they can't just move stuff whenever they feel like it because it sounds better. But this is the kind of, I think, in-depth look we need to take at ourselves and at our industry to say, how can we be smarter and safer? Okay? All righty, here's a good one, the easy one. In North America, do locate requests that indicate pre-excavation white lining have a higher or lower chance resulting in an incident? Lower. Pretty easy. Aha, not lower. Because of all the tickets that we looked at, it was significantly worse with white lining. Yeah. And so then a guy that's done this for most of his adult life sits there and goes, that's bullshit. That's not right. I know better than that. I've been around this industry forever, and I know that white lining saves lives. It makes people safer out in the field. It does all of these great things. But out of 150 some million tickets we looked at, and here's the key, and we'll talk about this, we're looking at action and reaction. The reaction typically is a damage or a near miss. That's what we're looking for. That introduces risk. So when we see that, and then we look at all the tickets, it's not that surprising that somebody that didn't call in a ticket obviously didn't white line, and then there's a damage. There's no correlating data between no ticket and then this damage versus tickets that somebody went through the proper process, white line, did everything they possibly could that happened to result into a damage for whatever reason. Just life happens, we get it. Those seem to have more of it because people that are white lining are more than likely to also report damages. So what we're seeing is these trends in the data which tell our guts the wrong thing, but what we're looking at is it's the quality of data and how the data is being used to create these algorithms. So we'll start talking more and more and more why it's important to know the reaction data that you're using and is it good? And that's one of the things we'll talk about more. We love dirt, we love the idea of damage tracking, but if we're really going to make strides and use data to really make our life safer and reduce damages by 5 years, we have to know damages better and it has to be accurate. So it's a big push. If you're not doing that, you might as well throw a dart at a wall instead of putting a dartboard up, right? You hit the board, who cares? I hit the wall, same difference. But if you're actually saying, I care about these things, you need to have action and reaction data. And that's what gives us to it. So this is where everybody lost the car, Steve. And yeah, I know. It's the sucker bet. So here's the bonus question. How much more likely is the incident? Again, overwhelmingly, almost 90% more likely to be a high-risk ticket if you have white lining on it. So one of the things that we've learned is we have to really start understanding our data and changing the behavior behind it. Yeah, so this is the hard part. We're all writing things because we don't have a solid answer why this really is. Our gut is telling us that the reason for this is what I said earlier. White lining typically tends to be a more complete ticket, which then has a more complete ticket history. That's the only thing we could really figure out. We saw no other indicating factors out of 150 million tickets that we looked at on this that would show us any difference other than that. Everything it just showed there was a white line and there was a damage, and the damages that were out there that didn't have white lining were far fewer than those that did. So, but I won't say that too loud because then everybody thinks I'm off my rocker. Okay, so that was kind of a brief kind of walkthrough. I kind of want to open up the floor to any questions that people have. I see a few hands going up.
The room's so large, please use the mic.
Hi, Andy Cowles from Verizon. Particularly on that white lining question. So, seeing as that's almost a negative type of thing, is that something that would be taken out of the model? Like, how do you address
Good question.
data?
Yeah. You know, what's great about using these algorithms and kind of stuff is it's a kind of a continuing work in progress, right? So one of the things that we like to do is complement kind of the AI process with using some traditional tabular tools as well, right? So in this case, what we might do without trying to remove it, because we want to, I mean, we're all curious. We want to keep seeing if this trends correctly. So I don't want to remove it out of the algorithm, but what I want to do is make exceptions to the rules. So inside of a system using risk and looking at these things, what we would probably typically do is identify anything where it was a white lining ticket and put that in a separate area. Then what we'll do is build a separate algorithm that will run against those and any corresponding ones to see if the trends stay the same. Because maybe we're all wrong. I don't think we are. I don't want everybody to be like, that guy said no white line. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying is we want to see where it proves out, right? And then what factors in addition to white lining? Are people doing other things when they white line as well? Are there more members on the ticket? Is it a gas ticket typically, right? What are we seeing that really does that? But in your case, what I would tell you is we really work with our clients to figure out what their end goal is. Some people want to screen tickets, right? Some people want to make sure that they're identifying high-risk tickets and sending proper notification out to the field. So it's really what your goals are, right? When I go to ChatGPT, I have like 4 different versions that I use, right? I have the professional version, so I'm like, please respond to this email in my voice and make it sound professional. And it comes out, it's good. I copy, paste it, I put it over, and then my boss goes, that's really nice. And I go, thank you. That's really nice. But then I also have the ChatGPT that I use to send to my friends. And if I ever make a mistake and ask it to do my professional emails, I'll probably be fired because I've trained it really well on my sense of humor and my stuff. So the goal of what you're trying to do is very critically important. I think anytime you walk around and people are like, risk and AI and all that, these are great terms. But it's basically saying, here's a hammer, here's a saw. And then if you don't know what to do with it, it's kind of useless. How did you know you could build a house with that hammer, right? I used to tell people all the time, I sell hammers, but I can't ensure that you don't hit yourself over the head with it. And that's the same thing with AI here. And I think AI becomes so, it's so sexy at times, right? Because this is, like, as a tech guy, I love this stuff, right? It's like, hey, this is cool, because, like, for fun. And we'll talk dreams and stuff. But what we've been doing with our training stuff is we've been trying to recreate one-call tickets with visuals. So we see actual tickets. We try to make these all through AI so that then, once we feel good with that, then we can build it into our training materials and create real tickets using AI that then will allow people to train correctly. So if I have somebody who has a really hard time locating a gas line, right? I can tell my chat thing to create 70 tickets that are with gas guys, and I want it in rural America and these kind of things. So then they actually have to go in and draw on it. These are all just virtually being created, but it's for an intended purpose, right? I wouldn't want that guy to also then go mark his telco lines, right? So kind of idea. But I would say this, there is no AI model that works for everybody. Our national model that we use, just, hey, you want to see what risk looks like and put your tickets into it? It's very broad, right? And so what happens is people are like, I'm not getting the kind of success I would hope I would have. And then we go, okay, let's use your data and let's use your scenarios. And then what you see is that skyrocket. So I hope that answered that. Well, I'll get over here.
Hi, Kate DeVries from T-Mobile. You had mentioned that you have some customers that you train their AI twice a year, and then others you do real-time training. Is there a specific, did you guys have like a guidelines that helped you decide which way to go?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because tech isn't just tech. So we were really good at writing ticket management software, and then we started to play around with AI. And then what we did was the smartest thing is we went and found the best data scientists in the world, and we hired them, right? These are the guys, what convinced me, and I'm a sucker for a good story, they turned around Target's makeup sales, and they were able to take Target's makeup sales and increase it by more than 45%. Based on using AI. They knew how to stock the stuff and all that. And so they had built all of these really unique things that addressed a challenge. And so when we started talking with them, we were like, this is great. And then they started educating us in drift, and they educated in more stuff. The more and more we got educated, we were like, can we build a real-time solution? So for them, it was very much, what's the goal? The goal was identify risky tickets. And then they said, great. And then we use all this data. And then when we went to a certain client, they were like, that's not who I am. This is what I am. So then we started training it to see the results. Honestly, they weren't going to buy the solution using our national model because it didn't give them the right results. They were like, this is, my gut tells me if I make a filter and say white lining, it's fine, and that kind of stuff. So what we had to do was really deep dive in with them. And so it's still a process. This is still so new for so many clients. And what we're talking about right now is only on the raw ticket that comes in, looking at the ticket and putting a risk score. What I want to tell you about, and this is the part that we really haven't shared with a lot, is now we're going to start introducing risk at creating tickets. So when you log in to create a ticket, you're an excavator, you'll be able to see how many tickets were assigned and created in this region on this day of the week. And maybe there's more than the normal levels. And so maybe you want to move your thing. We see rain prediction. And so what we want to do is put the creation AI involved. So when you're building tickets to begin with, we're hoping to reduce risk at the first place. Then when you get it, you get your own set of rules that you're using AI for. So anytime you can identify risk and reduce it at any part of the process, we want to do. And the only way really to do that is work backwards. You start, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time, right? So that's kind of the idea. So this is a big elephant that we're going after.
Hi, Neon here, Pacific Gas and Electric.
Hey.
I'm thinking about directed retraining model, and the example you had with Sunday being the most dangerous day of the week.
Uh-huh.
If we're using the model effectively, I think we're changing behavior as estimators, and we're driving down damages. But how do we ensure that we're not inadvertently shifting to Monday, say, and planning to be black day?
You will.
Are we?
You are. Yeah, I mean, that's that drift, right? That's what we talked about. Because what happens is action, reaction, and then a replacement. So now what we've just done is, hey, Sunday's no longer risky. We all high five. Guess what? There's still a risky day of the week. The question is which day? And the question is, why does it become risky, right? Does it become risky, like, is January risky because people are still knocking off the cobwebs of the holiday season? How do we change that behavior? I don't know. That's something I don't want to figure out. But like in the case of we've identified Sunday and then maybe it moves to Tuesday, what do we do different? Probably not much. I think at the core, what you'll find is, what we're hoping is, are there maybe a handful of key behaviors that we can affect and highlight for people in order to make better decisions, right? Because it's really, and I'll say this over and over, it scares me when people talk like the Geek Squad I talked about. And they said, hey, we're getting rid of all the geeks. And I will say this over and over and over, and I know most people won't believe this. The most valuable asset we have in this room are the boots on the ground. I can't tell you how important that is. I say this over and over. I'm the weird guy. I'm the tech guy, and everybody thinks I want to eliminate. No, 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 no. I want boots on the ground because those are the eyes that give me quality data back. Without that, I can't change behavior. So what we're hoping is the guys that are out there who are gathering data, who are making good decisions, we're hoping that we can train them so they can do more. And that's really the idea. But I don't know, because the white lining one, you wouldn't want to train against it. You wouldn't want to change the behavior and be like, nobody white line. And then we go, look at all these damages. So, yeah. Do I have, I don't know what time it's supposed to end.
2 minutes.
Okay. Got any other questions? All right, I'm going to try this right. So Steve is going to tell you, everybody needs to go to their app, open up the app, take the survey. Well, I'd like to thank everybody today. This has been a pleasure. I was doing damage prevention conventions many, many years ago, and to see that the whole convention was in a room this size. I mean, and so to have this many people sitting in a room that are really concerned about damage prevention, I appreciate it. It really means a lot. Thank you.